One of the things that happens when you start to improvise over changes is that you focus so much on playing the right notes that you forget to play music. It's kind of what happened to me. My solos were the type that give jazz a bad name. Lots of notes, scales, arpeggios, but they were kind of boring and they lacked soul. And that was the exact opposite of the way I played when I was playing rock and blues. So I knew there had to be a way, and there are plenty of players doing something more than just running changes. So I decided to go back to my roots, and I was amazed at what I found. So stick around. This is going to change the way you play. Hi, I'm Dr. George with Jumpstart Jazz Guitar, helping you make better music. Before we get started, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In this video, we're going to take a fresh look at the pentatonic scale. You're going to learn two powerful scale patterns that will totally transform your solos. You'll be able to stop worrying about notes and start playing music again. So when I was starting out playing guitar, I learned the basic pentatonic patterns that everybody knows, But when I was about 15 or so, I went to a band camp and I got to take a couple of lessons with a jazz guitarist. And he showed me a little different pattern. And it went like this. Now what that is it's basically combining the first two patterns, pattern 1 and pattern 2, and together. But it made all the difference in the world by having this 3 notes on one string, and I was able to phrase just a little bit better. A lot easier than just playing 2 notes on a string. Now, when I got to Berkeley, pentatonics weren't cool, and I kind of put that pattern aside, and I learned all of my major scales and melodic minor scales and arpeggios and things like that, and started soloing with those and playing, running changes, basically. And I was playing all the right notes, but I wasn't very happy with the way I was playing, and so I decided to take a look at what I could do to get back to playing the way I played before. And so, of course, I started looking at the pentatonic scale. And I was really surprised. I found that it's actually going to work pretty well. And what I ended up doing is I ended up modifying it a little bit. Now, the first thing that I did is instead of leaving it down here, leaving this note here, I moved it up here so that I end up with another 3 notes on a string. And I also figured out that, I could do that with another pattern too. I could start on pattern 4 and combine that a little bit with pattern 5, and we'd end up with something like this. And when I combine the 2 of those patterns, I have the whole neck covered. So the next step was to figure out if I could play jazz using pentatonic scales. Now, there's certainly plenty of examples, a lot from the early 60s, of players that were using the pentatonic scale. Kenny Burrell on his Midnight Blue album, Work Song by Cannonball Adderley, Sunny Moon for Two. So there's plenty of examples of using the pentatonic scale, but it was mostly on blues, 1-4-5. I wanted to see if we could take it a little bit further. And so what I figured out is that, yes, you can in fact use a pentatonic scale on a standard. But the difference is that we don't use the minor pentatonic on all the time. If we're going to play a major tune, a tune in major, we're going to use the major pentatonic. Now, of course, it has exactly the same notes as the minor pentatonic, so if you want to think about it as being a minor pentatonic, you can certainly do that. But it works just fine, and so when we solo over changes, it'll sound pretty good. It sounds something like this. So you see, the key is to play with feel and groove, which is the whole point, is to try and actually play more expressively and follow my ideas, thinking about the sound and the song rather than thinking about the notes and the chords. Now, it's important that you have these under your fingers, so you want to make sure that you practice them plenty and that you're really hearing them, but you already know the sound of the pentatonic scale. So there's nothing really new here other than the stylistic elements of playing. So now, as you heard, that basically kind of works. Now, there's a few places where it's not perfect, but in most cases, 4 out of the 5 notes will work on just about every chord. And there are a few notes that are missing, and that brings us to the next point, and that is that we need to rethink about how we deal with the pentatonic scale. Now, when we first learn it, we kind of treat it almost like a prison. Like we have no choice but to be able to play those notes, and we can't play any other notes. And people are always asking, how do I get out of that? Well, the first way to get out of it is to think about it correctly and realize that a scale is just a framework. It's kind of like the frame of a house. Okay? Now, we need that frame of that house, but nobody wants to look at it. Okay? What's interesting is how you add other things to it. And that's one of the reasons for these 2 pentatonic patterns, because they're really easy to add notes to. You know, if I want to play, here's my blue note, passing tones, we can add chords. Okay, so it's really easy to add different kinds of notes to this. And in fact, there are 7 other notes. We're only playing 5 when we're dealing with a pentatonic scale. So you can add arpeggios and patterns on top of it, but you can always come back to it because it's the safe place. So as you see, jazz doesn't have to be all scales and arpeggios. And in fact, those should actually come later. The first thing we need to do is we need to get the feel and the sound of the music correct. And the pentatonic makes a great framework for that. Most importantly, we can't be thinking about the notes. We have to think about the sound and the song and what it is we're trying to convey, and not worrying about whether or not this note goes with this chord. If you listen to all of the great players, if you look at their transcriptions, you're going to find that there's lots of notes in there that just simply don't belong, yet they work. And you can do the exact same thing. So make sure that you're playing what you want to hear, and your ear will guide you. And gradually, your ear's going to say, I need this note, I need that note, and you'll start adding notes to the pentatonic scale, and it'll open up the entire neck for you. So take some time to learn these 2 patterns and then try it yourself on some standards. It'll work more often than you think. And of course, it's going to work on the blues too. Now, these are great scales, but they're not the only scales that I use. But I don't use nearly as many as you might think. And they're all included in my free download, The Essential Scale Patterns for Jazz Guitar. It'll open up the neck, help you move in all directions, and I include the steps to get them quickly under your fingers. So just click on the link down below to get your free copy. And please leave a comment and let me know what you think about using these patterns. Thanks again for watching.